we're going to need 50 million units of humanoid labor by 2040 if we're going to maintain where the world is at economically.
Today I'm sitting down with Nic Radford, the co-founder and CEO of Persona AI. Persona is building next-generation humanoid robots made specifically for heavy industry.
We said, okay, general purpose humanoids might be a ways off. What if we attack a general purpose task? So that's our go-to-market strategy, is to do welding in shipyards.
Now, there's a lot of hype right now around humanoids in general, but Nic and his team are taking a very intentional, methodical approach of where humanoids make the most sense, and they have landed on specific industrial uses.
Our pitch at Persona is we can help you with your production. We are putting something into the field that they can't get otherwise.
He has spent his entire career in the robotics space and spent several years at the NASA Dexterity Lab, and is a fascinating guy. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and remember to go direct. All right, and we are live. Nic, how are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. You know, some people are like, fine. Oh, things are good. Fantastic, right? That's the way I like to open it up.
Fantastic. Before we were live, we were just talking about how much of a shit show mornings can be with 3 and 5 year olds.
Yeah, thanks for clearing me on the profanity, because it might come out.
Okay, listen, hey, I'm excited. This one I'm really excited for, and shout out to Jamie for connecting us up from Wave Ventures. And, you know, I have to say it just for all the listeners again, which is, if we're ever going to want to decentralize the real economy, decentralized production is at the heart of it. And obviously AI and robotics are critical enabling technology, because without it, we just don't have a chance, which is just the reality. But Nic, I wanted to start here, which is like a little bit of a different kind of direction maybe, but then I kind of want to pass it over to you. So the first thing for me is, I see a lot of stuff in the robotics space that I'm actually less excited about, because I've always said it's not about technology itself. It's about how you apply that technology, what intentionality you have to do with that technology that actually makes a difference and improves society. And so I think kind of your focus on industrial humanoids seems to be very intentional. We'll get into that. But all right, so most people have pretty short lenses. They don't really look at why robotic development is so important. And I'm just going to give you my perspective, but I'm going to do it within a couple statistics, and then Nic, you take it from here, okay? So, and it's about the depopulation trend. And this is not to be alarmist. This is because there's all different statistics and stats you can find out there, but there's some real stuff here. So I'm just going to read a couple for you. So in 1965, the total fertility rate was a little over 5 children per family. In 2025, it's about 2.25. Some estimates show that by 2100, so that's in 75 years, that could go as low as 1.5. So 2/3 of the world's population now live in countries with fertility rates below 2. And obviously, once fertility rates go below 2, we are below replacement level. And so just a couple more little stats, and these are a little bit more aggressive projections. But I think it was pretty fascinating to put it into perspective is, by 2100, China will lose about 1 billion people if they're in the current trajectory. Japan will have the same population that they had in 1900. Italy will have less than 30 million people, and South Koreans will literally be close to extinct, and they're at 0.7 right now, kids per family. So anyways, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Nic. And as it relates to kind of why robotics development is so important to you, you've spent your career doing it. And I wanted to use the depopulation piece because that's part of the reality of the game in the field.
Yeah, thank you for that. I ironically just got back from APEC 2025. I was fortunate enough to be invited to speak actually on this topic. And the stats are actually worse than what you've highlighted.
Tell me. Tell us.
So if you look at the UN data, there's a lot of projections. The UN runs a couple of models. You can pull this offline, and they've got a medium and they've got several different aspects that they look at. So if you take one of their models, they show us hitting about 9 billion people and then peeling over and declining pretty rapidly. You know, this replacement rate concept, obviously it's real, and you mentioned it, but this is likely the first time. We've had little blips in our population before. You can chart the data. We've had enormous wars, plagues. But this will be the first time where the growth rate and the population are significantly going down. And so basically, by 2050, if I get my numbers right, by 2050, 1 in 3 people in both Japan and Korea will be over the age of 65. 1 in 4 in America, 1 in 6 on average in the world. It's about 1 in 11 today. So not only are we going to have an accelerating decrease in the younger generation, we are also going to be so top heavy. So the lion's share, we're going to have a ton of people that are going to be in the middle and on top, and fewer younger people. I mean, this is a problem in a lot of the Asian cultures right now, because culturally, the way that the younger generation really, works with and helps assist with the older generation, parents, grandparents living with families and whatnot. We don't do that so much here in the West, although I married a woman from Belarus, and I had her parents living with us for multiple years. So that was quite a shift. My wife's, my father-in-law and mother-in-law do not speak English. And so it's, I don't know if you've ever lived with your father-in-law for any extended period of time.
So I have, my wife is French, and I did live with my in-laws during COVID, the father speaks a little bit of French. The mother speaks a little bit of English. The mother speaks no English.
Yeah. Do you speak French?
I do.
Yeah, I do as well. So that would have been amazing. But I don't speak that much Russian. And so I do more now, but that was an entertaining couple of years. But my point being that not only are we going to have an acceleration decline in the growth rate and also the population, and we're going to have less capable people in the younger generations. And so I think that's anyone's theory on what's going to happen. But one thing we can probably assume is that we're going to have more and more automation, because we will physically have less and less people. Now, you also then couple that to the nature of work. That's absolutely changing right now. Over the next 25 years, we expect a 50% exit from the industrials market. Right now, 75% of people in hiring positions in the industrials market claim they are having a severe time filling jobs because of all the dynamics of the changing nature of work. Like you're a full-time angel investor and podcaster. You're not a welder, right? Everybody wants to be a YouTuber and an influencer now, especially the much younger folks, right? No one's going into the skilled trades. So we still build things. We still need things. So what's going to fill that gap? So from my vantage point, there's only a couple of realistic solutions. And if it's not automation, I don't know what it is, but we're going to have to come up with a way of, because we don't want, if you hold constant or at least grow economy, right? So even if you hold constant GDP, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, they put out a couple marketing reports recently. They were like, we're going to need 50 million units of humanoid labor by 2040 if we're going to maintain where the world is at economically. That's wild.
That's wild.
Right?
It's wild.
Yeah. It's wild. And they say that because everyone's doing the math. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going, you're under. So here's another crazy stat. And we'll check this. It's been a while since I've quoted this stat, but it's something like $500 billion that South Korea threw into fertility. And they got zero movement on affecting their population rate.
That's wild.
No, exactly. So I've been to South Korea now 4 times in the last 12 months, and most people just call it Korea. It is fascinating. When you walk around, I started noticing this. When you walk around, how there's couples, there's people, there's people holding hands, walking around. And once in a while, you'll see them with a kid. You never see them with 2. Never. And it became, so we started going so often. We talked about this population dynamic thing for so long that when I would go over there with part of my team members, etc., we'd be looking around, and I was like, gee, look at this. Where you rarely see, rarely. I mean, I can think, I don't even know, but maybe I saw somebody with 2 kids, walking around holding hands, on the weekend or whatever. You see one, absolutely. Once in a while, you'll see somebody, not uncommon, mother carrying a baby, mother walking, father walking a child as a family walking around. 2 is, I can't remember if I've ever seen.
Did you
family walking with 2 kids?
Did you have, just curious, since you've been there, because it's, what's on the ground is oftentimes very different than the headlines you read. So did you have just like random conversations with folks and young families and what like the kind of mindset is around kids?
One person, female, professional, I was approached it very delicately. And I was just kind of, we were, we were going out to dinner after we had a professional engagement with at the company. We were out raising money, trying to find commercial clients. We've been really fortunate enough to have a lot of luck in Korea. And so one of these moments where we're out having soju after, 3 hours of meetings, and conversation kind of moves around, and I just kind of dipped my toe in the water of like, hey, they're like, hey, tell me about home. And I'm like, oh, I got 3 kids, one of them in college. And this woman in her mid-30s, professional. I mean, I remember this, I know exactly where everybody was sitting. I mean, it was just kind of like, kind of hit me with a ton of bricks. I was like, okay, so, how's it over here? And like, what do you guys do for fun? And like, she was married, mid-30s, and just wasn't even considering it. Wasn't even considering it. She was just thinking about her job and her career and just, and I was just casually, she's like, oh, you have 3 kids. I'm like, yeah, it's been the greatest joy of my life. Like, not even close. And I was like, so, tell me about your side. And she was like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to, do my job better. And I was like, oh, what do you, because you just got to be so careful, right? And so you open it up. I was like, oh yeah, I got 3 kids. Oh, so tell me about your side. She's like, oh no, I don't have any kids. And I was like, oh, that's, what are you thinking? She's like, oh, I don't know. We may one day. I don't know. This is like mid-30s. You may one day.
Sure.
You gotta. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, listen, the only the context that I have is obviously in the U.S. and a little bit over in Europe. But I think the reality is this, where it's like, if you I don't get philosophical here, but if you structure society in a way where like having children is not very enjoyable because you're stressed so much because of affordability. Mm-hmm. And a large percentage of the population can't figure out a way economically to succeed economically in that economic system, and they can't provide their kids with a better life than them. I mean, this is what I see and feel. They just opt out. I mean, I think it's something like 50% of Gen Zers are not in relationships and don't want to be in one.
Yeah, this is tough, right? This is more like we should be talking about this at 8:00 at night with a bottle of whiskey and I discuss some of this stuff, but it's hard to get around it because it is the backdrop.
Sure.
Right.
That's right.
It's the undercurrent. It's the backdrop. Everybody gets up on stage or a pitch or something, and everyone talks about labor scarcity. It is the motivating component, a lot of where we're heading with some of this stuff. Or rather, it's the motivating component. We've had enablers, and we can get into all the, the compute and the AI and the actuation and this and that and the other, to where we can start constructing robotic systems. Some of them look like humanoids, other ones look like whatever they want to look like. And that is that is an enabling component. But the motivation has always been like, yeah, can't hire anybody. Okay, well, why can't we hire anybody? Well, there's about 14 dynamic reasons, of which one of them has to do with the growth rate. And the world has gone down. I mean, think about it. From 76, you start keeping track around in the 70s. Those 25 years, 50% growth rate worldwide. So then the last 25 years, about a 35% growth rate worldwide. The next 25 years, we're looking at an 18% growth rate worldwide, 12% in the US. Like, growth rate is just plummeting. You go out to about 2100, like you were talking about, we're going to have the growth rate around what we had worldwide in the 1600s. Okay. This is like moving an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
This shit moves slowly, right? I mean, you just don't go, okay. There's a huge lagging thing, populations. It takes people time to grow up, become childbearing age, right? So it's a fait accompli already. I think that's why people that know more about this than I do, a lot more, have been probably aggressively investing in automation technologies. And on the spectrum, you've got everything under the sun, from AI to you name it, because they see the writing on the wall.
Yep.
And it scares me, right? Because before we got on this call, you were like talking about being in Detroit, and you're hanging out with your neighbor whose dad makes the car that you're driving, right? It's like, I'm an old soul. So I don't know where you want to take this, but I'm an old soul, man. Like, my kids are not going to have an iPhone anytime soon.
Yep.
We just bought a lot of property in southern Indiana in the hill country, where we go and they run around and pick up turtles and find snake skins and chase animals and go look for deer and get scared to death by turkeys as you're walking through the woods, and they go and will fly away from you. And we've been fortunate enough to have that, and we spend the summers there. We go back every other month for a couple of weeks, enjoy the fall. I want to give my kids an upbringing that looks like that, instead of this sedentary, glowing screen. I mean, there's a lot of people talking about this, and we don't need to get into this. I know.
Sure.
We should talk about whatever you want to talk about. But it all matters, though, man. It all matters.
I agree. Listen,
it all matters.
I as I mentioned you, my wife being French, like the French approach and the system with raising children and just their whole approach is just way more connected to nature. They're way more against screens. It's actually much more aligned with my whole vibe, honestly.
Yeah. I had an apartment in south of France for 18 months. So,
nice.
Because I had a French fiance for a while, and it didn't work out, but the life is so different, No,
it is.
Gosh. No.
There's
a reason they don't produce much.
That's a separate conversation.
But all right, maybe they got a good balance.
Yeah, they got the lifestyle thing figured out. We're in southern Indiana, and then we'll get into the robot thing.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the area, it's it's near Nashville.
Okay.
The smaller Nashville, which is closer to Bloomington and IU. I went to Purdue, so it's tough for me to be so close to IU. But it's in hill country, Brown County. It's the best thing I ever did.
So I'm an IU grad. So
are you shitting me?
I won't hold it against.
Are you kidding me? You're an IU grad? Oh my God.
I tell people.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the football team this year, by the way.
Dude. We're a football school now.
I don't know how you did that.
We still don't know how to be a football school, but.
And we're a basketball school. We've been a basketball school for a while, just not had the success IU has had at the national level. But if it doesn't happen this year, I'm just going to be like, fuck it.
The just last thing, Brown people don't know this. If anyone who has never been to Brown County, Southern Indiana, I didn't leave for 4 years after when I lived there because I was just obsessed with the whole region. Amazing weather, amazing people, and beautiful. So go check out Southern Indiana.
No, absolutely, man.
Let's get into robots. All right, so I'm gonna bring up an image because I think it's really important, Nick. Around because I think there's all this news now, obviously with Neo, 1X's Neo coming out. For folks that didn't see, 1X is another company in the humanoid space that just announced that they're going to be releasing pre-orders for their Neo, and they're taking orders for Neo. They'll be releasing in the home in beginning of next year, I believe. So, but I wanted to show one thing. Wow. Here we go. So for folks that are just listening, I'm just pulling up, actually, this is Persona's website. And so I'm just going to keep this image up because I think it's very important. I read here, and Nick, I'll pass it over to you, that kind of the core element of the technology for Persona comes from IP from NASA when you're working in the Dexterity Lab. And it's around a hand and dexterous hands that can do a variety of industrial tasks. And so what I have on the screen is just shows kind of the approach that Persona is taking to actually having humanoids do a variety of industrial tasks. You have an image of an assembler, a fabricator, a welder, etc. So Nick, just tell us a little bit about kind of the core technology and approach you guys are taking to humanoids.
So one thing you'll notice in this image is tools. And we licensed a hand from NASA, the Robonaut 2 hand, that was, in fact, one of the first academic papers ever written on the hand and the construction of the hand was a hand designed to use tools. So we put a lot of thought into the kinematic, the grasp morphology, the degrees of freedom, the strength, because we wanted to use common tools. And you don't see a lot of that, if any. A lot of the humanoid videos out there might be moving some materials, putting a dish away, folding something, but you don't see somebody with an angle grinder, like we were like, if we're going to build this system, it's going to sit there and hold an angle grinder, and it's going to have to have the two kinds of grasp morphologies, your power grasp, your dexterous grasp. The hand is just fascinating, and we could talk an hour about this. And I've been fortunate enough to work really closely with people and be part of design teams that were working on this. And although I didn't study it formally, but the hand makeup from a physiological standpoint, when we were in the lab, the people that were helping design a lot of the mechanical side of this, they went and dissected hand cadavers, really learn about the hand, and it is extremely fascinating. It's like 18 to 20 degrees of freedom, depending on what literature you're reading. There's hardly any muscles that really exist in your hand. You have these tendons that flow through the carpal tunnel that anchor back to the muscles in the forearm. We call that extrinsically actuated. There's a lot of unactuated compliance around grasp. You've got two major grasps, power grasp, where you're holding something, and then you got these three fingers that are used for your dexterous grasp. And people replicate this in different ways. They emphasize one thing or the other. And it's hard to have a hand approach the kinematic dexterity of a human hand because you can't pack enough motors and gearing, and we unfortunately just don't have the same gravimetric and volumetric torque and power densities as human muscle. And so you see a variety of people try to design around this, whether they put the motors in the hand, the palm itself, which makes it a little bit bigger or a little weaker. And then there's a bunch of compliance, right? Your fingers, you can just move them. They backdrive really easily. You can adjust the admittance of your hand, which basically means how stiff you're grabbing something. The bandwidth of your finger, human bandwidth's about 10 hertz. And it's just the most incredible tool that's ever been invented, and it's been extremely difficult to replicate with robotics. We believe the Robonaut 2 approaches that better than any other hand architecture. So we decided to base our hand design on that. We're going to be modifying it. And over the generational improvements, we might move completely away from it, but it's an incredible starting position. So when you look at our strategy, we said, what market do we think is going to move first in this global humanoid race? Because it's all about adoption. And this is a long journey. This isn't going to happen overnight. I love reading the marketing reports because they're all sort of written from a real bullish scenario.
Sure.
But even if you discount that 50% or 75%, you're still talking staggering amounts of humanoid units of labor that we're going to need. And so we said, all right, maybe the warehouse is not where we start. Maybe sorting parcels is not where we start. Well, you might say, why? Well, because they have really thin ROIs. They've got really thin business cases. So we need really strong business cases out of the gate. And then you say, okay, well, the home looks like an enormous market. Wouldn't everybody want Rosie, the robot from the Jetsons, to clean everything? I think it's going to be a stretch to go from the Roomba to a humanoid. I read somewhere that, we got 4 or 8 million Roombas in around something. So you call it 5 million. And I have one. And every time my Roomba goes off and does its thing, I got to go vacuum my house behind it. I think it's a little questionable how well it works. And it just seems a major leap to go from a Roomba to a humanoid. It's a really difficult environment. It's hyper unstructured. I'm not convinced that the humanoid is at a safety level that's going to allow it to be packing a lunch while a 3-year-old's hanging on its leg, while the dog's running around, while this 8-year-old is running down the stairs to pick up the packed lunch. Like, it just really seems like a stretch to me. There's such a variety of tasks to be done. And the business model, what is it? Okay, we're going to sell this thing for 20 grand. You think consumers are ready for the third most expensive item in their portfolio? The house, a car, a humanoid? I'm not seeing it. So I think it is a market. I think it's 10 years minimum off. 10 years. And unless you're going to raise a couple $1 billion and wait it out, I think you're going to have a tough time going and attacking it. And so we decided that the best business case, the best unit economics, were to supplement the labor, the acute labor demand and the acute labor shortages, which are palatable in skilled trades and heavy industry. And we said, okay, general purpose humanoids might be a ways off. What if we attack a general purpose task? Something that if you do really, really well, it's going to flow adjacently across nearly every heavy industry. And that was welding. So that's our go-to-market strategy, is to do welding in shipyards. Shipyards are backed by a national strategic initiative, enormous production backlogs, acute labor shortages, purchasing power, and the willingness to adopt. And so we partnered with Hyundai really early in the company's life. Then we went off and raised the largest amount of money in the world for a company of our stage, $42 million pre-seed round, which is not small for pre-seeds. You hear 500K, you hear $1 million or 2 million. And I think it's because we struck a chord. We struck a chord with an investment community. They saw our plan, what's reasonable. It was a methodical march we're going to undertake. We compiled one of the best teams. We've been told by some investors, it's in black and white, written down in emails, best founding team we've ever seen. And they backed us. And, I was really honored to be connected with the people we've hired. You come to work every day and you just want to be better because the people you're around are so talented. And we went from 5 to 55 people in the last 9 months. We raised the money, designed our first system. It's walking around the lab. We've been a little light. We haven't shown anybody anything yet because we're going through 3 6-month generational improvements. Every 6 months, we're rolling the generation of the robot. So we just completed our first one a couple months ago. It's walking around. I mean, I can see it right now from my office. And we're already designing the second gen. We haven't put a video out on YouTube by design. because if we did and we showed people the early beginnings and the learnings we're undertaking, we're being compared against Chinese robots doing backflips and wall flips and, being part of like Chinese shows and theater. And
Yeah.
we're not there yet. And I don't know how useful a backflip is for a humanoid in the context of heavy industry, but we're methodically focused. The industry has a lot of automation in it. Automotive manufacturing is a heavy industry, but there's parts of it that we think don't make sense for humanoids right now. And so we wanted to focus from all the automation that exists. What's the next increment of that? And we think it's more specialized humanoids at first on the march towards general purpose. We think general purpose is going to be it's probably a stretch too far, too expensive, too indeterminate at the moment. That if we narrow the scope and we attack jobs that clearly require an anthropomorphic form, because you want the job to be invariant to whether a human is doing it on Tuesday or a humanoid is doing it on Wednesday. We have several trillion dollars of installed infrastructure into the world. Call them brownfields.
Mm-hmm.
We're not.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that you beeping? I keep getting like a beep.
No, it's me. I'm sorry.
Sorry. It's more for the listeners.
Speaking of automation, my garage door is indicating to me that it's opening. So my wife is now probably taking our 3 soon to be 4-year-old to school. So we said, let's just move the increment from overfit industrial style automation. What's the next step? And it's robots that clearly require the human form. If you've ever seen a shipyard, there's no question. You're like, yep, I get it. I understand why it needs to be a human form. And we said, okay, let's conquer welding. Take a page out of 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. Don't be so concerned about the size of your initial market. Just go in there and dominate it. Gosh darn it. And then move adjacently. So that's what we're doing.
Great. So I read too, you mentioned about having this relationship with Hyundai and shipbuilding. And it says you have an MOU to deploy humanoid robots for shipbuilding. But can you just explain a little bit more? Like, what is it? Is it a commitment? Like, what's the actual relationship there?
Yeah, so they are pulling in the first batch that we are building in November of 2026. We have a delivery date. It's we're selling out of an empty basket. We pre-sold this idea back when it was just really the founding team. They contacted us. They found us and said, we like the founding team. We think, you guys have put robots in space. You put them 2 miles underwater. We think you can build a robot for the shipyard. And hey, come to Korea. Let us show you what we're doing. And we came back from Korea going, this is amazing. And so we're delivering a batch of the first robots that we're building in November of 2026 for commercialization activities in 27. We're negotiating an LOI currently for a non-trivial amount of future units. And this is a success-driven milestone timeline and pursuit. And if we do our job, I think the sky's the limit on where this is going to go.
Great. Can you talk just a little bit more for folks, kind of a little bit about the founding story and a little bit about your co-founder, Jerry? Jerry was over at Figure for a little while, and just how you guys came together and why. And you gave a little bit of the why, but just this founding story is always interesting to me.
Yeah. Jerry and I have known each other about 20 years. We've been doing work together on and off over the years. I got my start at NASA, spent about 15 years there. For 10 of those years, I was helping lead and then outright leading the humanoid development lab there. We called it the Dexterous Robotics Lab. Had many different pursuits. We were building lunar rovers all the way to robots that were going to walk around on Mars. And so we were engaged in long-term R&D, and we were building robotic astronauts. So I've been in the humanoid game my entire career. I met Jerry in the lab. I remember the very first day I ever met him. He's a very impressionable individual, and he was carrying around a torque speed graph because we did a lot of actuation research. And Jerry's like, "This is the torque speed graph that you need for humanoid walking, and can you guys do this?" And that's really how it started. And him and I struck up a friendship. Jerry's very easy to be friends with, and we developed a camaraderie of bashing our head against the wall, trying to solve these seminal challenges of building a robot that looked like a person. And we just maintained a really close relationship and friendship. And we dreamed of always starting a humanoid robotics company together. And it really just was never the right time because of so many other technologies that had to tip first. And then we got close to starting a company in 2017. And then he left IHMC to be the CTO at Figure. I kept track of him there, and we talked often. I was even fortunate enough to consult at Figure for a few months in the early days, helping him develop out an actuation strategy there. But he left Figure. It was really difficult for him to keep traveling back and forth from Florida to California, and he called me up. I'd left my previous company, Nauticus, in January of 24, and he was available, I was available, and we said, why don't we go pursue our dream that we've always had? It seems to be the right time in the market, and that's how him and I got together and started Persona.
Great. And so let's dig a little bit into kind of your approach on the technology side. So the first thing was I wanted to understand, obviously, kind of the core part, differentiated part is obviously the hand that you license through NASA. But are you kind of taking a fully integrated, vertically integrated approach where you're building everything from the ground up, or how do you approach supply chain?
Yeah, so our strategy is evolutionary. We started with some off-the-shelf stuff to get our first unit up and running really quickly. You learn that it doesn't really matter the ultimate performance of your initial machine. It's just more important that it gets into the hands of the software team as soon as possible. And then every generational improvement, we're customizing and going deeper and more vertically integrated. And that exists both on the hardware and the software side. We're using some open source foundation models that we're training and tuning right now. We're going to be transitioning more into a Persona developed foundation model specific to dexterity and grasping. Those are a little absent in the field at the moment. Everyone's working on them, but it's anyone's guess how long it's going to take to develop this out. The big pole in the tent is we're not afforded the same luxury of scraping the internet for the entire corpus of human knowledge, right, like the large language model frontier aspects and frontier models are doing. To infer what the next word might be in a sentence, industrial action is you have to generate a lot of that information yourself. And there's varieties of ways to do it. We're exploring several of them. But the race is how you build out the library, the reference library of action that you're teaching the robots how to perform their work on. So it involves putting together data forms, manipulation training forms, building out a fleet of robots for your own purposes, getting a teleoperation crew together to teleoperate those robots in situ with the work that's being done, augmenting that with human demonstration data, throwing that all into a big vat and soup and stirring it all around and sprinkling in some reinforcement learning techniques, and out on the other end is, does it work in simulation? Does it work in the real world? And all simulations are doomed to succeed, so you can gain a level of of false confidence in sim. All models are wrong, but some models are useful, and Then you have to really tune that up in the real world and then deploy that into the context of the work that's going to be done. And so we're handling all of it. The reason we raised as much money as we did is because that pursuit is a massively parallel puzzle, and you have to solve so many of those pieces at the same time.
Okay. And do you have a perspective? Obviously, everyone's talking about like these real world physical AI models are just so hungry for all this diverse data, real world data, as you said. Do you have a view on, whether it's teleoperation, whether it's, first person view human video, whatever, like the different forms of training data, or is it like you need all of it to kind of
you need all of progress? It, but it's in different stages, right? You can get by with a lot of pre-training egocentric data, which is just certain camera views, but at the end of the day, you need a lot of data on how tools are held and used, the motions and the trajectory of how humans are performing certain things. So you need the broad-based view, but you also need the narrow view. And it just depends on which phase of training the model you're in. And it's a big deal. It's probably the entire game. Teleoperation is probably going to scale poorly. It might scale, that method of collecting and deploying the actions will scale to maybe a first 100 or 1,000 units, but we're going to have to find a more economical way of doing this besides hiring an army of teleoperators.
Yeah, and you have all these, and I've seen a bunch, maybe 10, 15, 20 of these, kind of scale version, some sort of version of scale AIs pop up, folks in the robotics space. Have you worked with many of those folks, or like what's the state of that today in your mind? The service providers to help with the training data?
Yeah, I mean, we have engagements with some well-known companies using their open-sourced aspects, and the engagement's really like calling up 1-800 company name and saying, we're trying to do this and need a little help. It's a tough everyone's trying to figure out where in the value chain they sit. And the humanoid companies think they're at the end of the line, the labor provider. We're almost like a staffing agency. We just use humanoids. But in order to do that, you have to endow the machine with a bunch of intelligence. That intelligence is going to be extremely expensive to do on your own and a long time. So better likely, if you want to go fast, you probably do everything yourself, but that's only going to get you so far. If you want to go far, you're going to have to go together with the coalition of the willing of a bunch of different people. This is an ecosystem of companies that are working on various parts of this. So we're a little bit more open-minded than most on how to achieve this. But we don't have an exclusive, strong partnership with one of these companies because at the end of the day, we think we're going to have to go vertical in that area. So we're learning as much as we can, and then we're going to roll out our own version.
And on the hardware side, are you thinking the same thing where, you hear many folks, Figure and Tesla talk about, hey, the supply chains don't exist for a lot of this. That's why you literally have to build a lot of it from the ground up on the next generation hardware side. Are you finding a similar thing, or the way that you're designing for the industrial space, it's a little bit less important and it's really just really about the dexterity of the hands and doing, like you said, in this case, the welding task?
There's a better supply chain that exists today than there ever has. We were able to put our first unit together because of that. We were a benefactor of the existing supply chain that has gotten a lot better than it was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But that's kind of like getting to the 80th percentile solution really quickly. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to perform at the cycle rates with the reliability and the cost point by incorporating the existing supply chain. You're going to have the 95th percentile solution is going to require a judicious amount of customization. And one thing I think is absent in the psychology of the entire field is how cutthroat companies are going to be on cycle times. we might fall into the trap that we're giving each other high fives and we're patting each other on the back when the robot's able to just perform the activity. And then the client's going to say, well, sure, you guys did it in 17 seconds, but we need it done in 9 seconds. So get that thing out of here. 17 seconds, everybody's going to like, oh my gosh, look, it works. But that has nothing to do with a business model. An existence proof doesn't mean it's gonna make money. And we got to be really, really careful about what success looks like.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, maybe because I'm not a roboticist and I don't have a technical background, but they kind of crossing the chasm with is what you just said. And I just feel like my gut tells me it's much harder than what most people think, especially when actually humans are actually pretty efficient when it talks about moving around the environment and doing the things that they're doing, actually.
Yeah, I know. They're the greatest general purpose machine on the planet. Yeah, I mean, listen, it took us 25 years to go from the horse and buggy to the car. So we got to be really open-minded on how long this transformation is going to take. It might happen faster than that, but we're talking, we're still trying to deal with self-driving cars, and that's been 15 years. And everyone keeps pushing back the timeline of ubiquitous adoption of self-driving cars because it turns out to not be as simple as we all thought it was going to be. And then deliver that at an affordable price point, that's a whole nother set of problems. So I don't know how long this transformation to physical AI is going to take. It is possible, but it's gonna be a war. And you're going to have to be partnered with people that have the patience, the understanding, the corporate psychology to not get too short term, to have too much short termism, which is so prevalent in large corporations, to think quarter by quarter. But, we'll see.
One of the things I think about a lot too, and I wanted to ask you this as a roboticist, as someone who's been in this space pretty much your whole career, is someone who does not have a technical background, who's really interested in kind of helping to move the robotics space and automation space forward in these ways for many of the reasons that we discussed. I mean, is there an area that you would advise folks to really look at now if you don't have that technical background that can help solve some of these problems or gaps?
No, I don't know. That's a tough question.
Okay.
I mean, hopefully we don't need robot psychiatrists out helping. But yeah, it's unfortunately, for right, wrong, or indifferent, better or worse, it's going to be left in the hands of deeply technical staff. I've seen companies pop up recently that are trying to help with adoption. There's a group that spun out of, they were at Boston Dynamics, and then they were at Field AI, and it's a group of people, couple people that said, what we're seeing the problem be is the connective tissue between the technology providers and the users. The users have one view of how it's going to get done, and the technology providers have a suspect amount of education on how corporations adopt technology. And we need to be that glue to help the transition because we understand both sides. That might help. I don't think you don't necessarily have to have a deeply technical background to understand the limitations of what might be provided, and then the limitations of the people wanting to adopt it and helping bridge that gap. But I've seen that, right? It's, my last company, we were in pilot hell. It's really easy to get a pilot. It's really hard to move out of a pilot into real production and usage. Because companies, it's almost a free option to a company, right? And you take it as like, oh my gosh, we're partnered with X, Y, and Z. But what you don't understand is it's like a free option.
Yeah, they're just outsourcing their R&D.
Yeah, and then you get to the finish line and they tell you, nah, and you bet the farm on it, and you get a nah at the end, and you're screwed.
Yeah, so talk to folks a little bit. So I wanted to actually I wanted to talk a little bit about Nauticus. So obviously you went from NASA to and then started Nauticus. So just tell folks a little bit about what you did there and like how some of those learnings applied to Persona.
Wow, that is a whole other podcast. But
Hard to
what? And so we learned at NASA, it was all about putting robots in faraway locations and getting them to usefully interact with the world around them. And then then you say, okay, if you're going to take that concept and do something useful on planet Earth, where might that exist? And it was under the water. Working underwater is a lot like working in space. Very similar tenets environmentally. Just one, you don't have any air. Each location doesn't have any air. The weight of the ocean is crushing you from all sides. The absence of any atmosphere is trying to pull you out, right? It had very similar ideas, communication challenges, not being able to, having to deploy a robot and have it exist on its own and do things on its own in the environment. And so we started Nauticus with the concept of doing autonomous manipulation on the seabed. We worked with our biggest customer by far were defense-oriented, government-oriented customers where this was an acute concern. Then energy infrastructure companies came to us and said, we have been trying to deal with this problem forever. It's an enormously expensive thing to work underwater. We felt like we had nearly a 10 times improvement in time and cost. And so it made a lot of sense. What I learned was a lot, harkening back to what we just talked about, is it's easy to get a pilot. It's hard to get into production. You don't always understand the incentive matrix of why a corporation will do something. Learned to try to educate myself a lot better about the buying incentives of a client. Learned a lot about financing, what makes a financeable company, the market, the time to market. I mean, I learned more than we have time to discuss on here, but it has directly informed my view of starting Persona from the dynamic aspect of the inner workings of a company and the company's relationship with investors and clients.
Well, from what I read, right, you took it public through a SPAC in 2022, right? A $600 million SPAC or something. And then I know that the stock's just gotten hammered. And is everything, I didn't go that deep into the research, but I assume, is this kind of when you refer to being in pilot hell where the company's struggled now, or?
Yeah. Well, I also learned a lot about financial structures and
sure,
who you should bring onto the cap table. And I think Nauticus really took a bad piece of debt that hamstrung the company's ability to raise money through the open market. And until that debt is cycled out of the company, I don't think the stock's ever going to recover. That's my personal view. The technology that it was pursuing was phenomenal. The team was phenomenal. And it was definitely the right piece of technology in the right market, but it's the hardest market to commercialize in, the hardest customers to deploy though. It's extremely challenging. I mean, investors didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. It's really obscure. Working underwater, they're like, why do I care? Sure. We're like, it's enormous. It's an enormous TAM. The costs are incredible. We're undercutting the costs. What I learned more than anything is sales strategies that are trying to do something cheaper are really bad. You want to be able to help, if we had went to an oil company and said, we can increase your production on the top line by X, we'd have got a lot more interest, as opposed to saying we can reduce your cost of doing something you don't even want to do anyway, which is service and maintain these things. We can reduce that by, 50%. They're like, I don't care.
Yeah, they're way more attractive for expanding the top line, that's for sure.
Yep. And that's our persona. Our pitch at Persona is we can help you with your production. You have a multi-billion-dollar backlog. We're going to help you cycle that through.
Yeah.
We're not trying to save money necessarily. We might, at the end of the day, help our clients save money, but it's really, we are putting something into the field that they can't get otherwise. That's a much stronger position.
He has a way to expand revenue. You spent your entire career in robotics. Why?
Yeah.
Like, what is, there's something inside you that's drawn to it. So I'm like, I was very interested in like learning, like, is it come from a young age or?
Yeah, that's really funny because when I left Nauticus in January of 2024, I didn't even want to hear the word robot ever again. I was sick of it. It's a really difficult industry. It's going from the lab to real use cases is so hard because you get something breathing in the lab and then the real world just crushes it. And it's just rinse and repeat. And B2B is hard. I wanted to do something connected more to the consumer. I wanted to scale a business because somebody did a login. You know, they made a login and signed up. You know, I was like, wouldn't that be massively fascinating? And so I started this. I actually started a peer-to-peer shipping company called Onboard between my time leaving Nauticus and starting Persona. And I did 12 investor pitches. And to a T, they were all like, why are you doing this? You're not like some retired UPS executive that's saw a problem in the market and you're going to like go fix it. They're like, why do you care about shipping parcels internationally? And I'm like, guys, like, you know, and I had all these stats and all these investors and they were like, get the fuck out of here.
The robots got you. They're like,
right.
they brought
And
you
then
back.
I was like, you know, you do what you know. And it was cool to see the whole field make this massive pivot, bringing in AI to make these machines more robust to real-time uncertainties and more capable. And I just couldn't leave it alone. On a personal level, I live by two core concepts. The first one is to inspire my kids. And I saw the impact that Nauticus had on my 18-year-old. She grew up with it, right? She saw the changes and came to the lab and just it really influenced her mind. And now she's in engineering at Purdue. And then I have two little kids, soon to be 4 and 6. And I thought to myself, how are they going to feel about what I do every day? I'm really lucky because I have my hands on a lot of things. So I run a couple hedge funds as well that have been hyper successful. And I didn't have to start this company. I thought about retiring. I knew that starting a startup was going to be extremely difficult personally on my family, but I ultimately made the decision because I felt that my kids would be inspired by it. And then the second thing that drives a lot of my mindset is getting a group of people to do something that none of them individually think is possible. That's the magic of a startup. Because you go around, even here, right? There's something about the power of the collective that is able to produce something that each of them individually have doubts that we're going to achieve. And that, man, is magical. And I just couldn't leave it alone.
Yeah, I'm always been intrigued by this. It's something that makes a big impact on me, which is interesting, which is I just think that a lot of people just don't believe in themselves. And when you put the right support network around them,
that's right.
And put them, you know, I think this comes with age and maturity and understanding people. And it's like, actually, most people can be really, really successful. They're just not put in the right place, or they don't have someone looking out for them to make sure they're being put in the right place to be effective, you know?
Yeah. 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 I think a lot of these things can be taught, but it does take a certain personality to want to be the founder and in the C-suite of a startup. I think there's a lot of our staff that have that capability, but for whatever reason, they didn't do it.
Yeah.
And And you have this responsibility as a founder and CEO to help pass some of the learnings on to the next generation, whether that's part of your company or somebody externally. I was a benefactor of a lot of great mentorship in my time, and there's some weird divide that occurs that some people that could probably pursue this don't end up working for people that do pursue it, but maybe one day they will. And it's all about risk tolerance. I'm exceptionally comfortable with risk. Exceptionally comfortable with risk. And I think that's what it boils down to. The people that I see that don't go pursue this, when I ask them and I get down to it, like, why didn't you? It's a risk profile.
Risk, yeah. Are you ready for a little rapid fire? Wrap it up? All right. I have a feeling you're going to be good at this. I don't know why, but we'll see.
Okay.
No pressure. All right. What's one myth about robotics that annoys you?
Oh, awesome. One myth about robotics that annoys me is sex robots. They're not coming.
I really want to go deep into that, but we're in rapid fire. So, what's the most overhyped idea in embodied AI right now?
Sex robots.
It's going to be the title of the conversation.
Yeah.
Sex robots. Single hardest problem you solved at NASA that changed how you think about building teams.
Oh man, that's amazing. Launching the robot to the space station and with a 6-month deadline. That was bringing together hundreds of people in a common purpose, all performing their jobs beautifully. It was an orchestration of excellence.
If you weren't building Persona, what would you be doing?
I'd be on my farm in Indiana.
Where will Persona be in 5 years?
To the moon.
How can people reach out to you or to Persona if they're interested in learning more?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm actually really good about getting back to people on LinkedIn.
Cool. Well, Nic, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. It's fun. We have a lot in common too, as well. Those are always fun ways to meet people for the first time. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, Jordan, it was such a pleasure to speak with you. Sorry you ended up at IU, but I'm rooting for your football team.
Oh man, yeah, we got the Purdue IU rivalry here. But cool, man. Well, best of luck. I'll be following the progress and look forward to doing it. Doing it soon. We have two follow-up conversations, one on sex robots and one on the previous company. So
love it. See ya.
All right, man. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.